Addir, which means bridge in ancient Sumerian, aims to build bridges between people with different religious beliefs, practices, traditions, and cultures. So I would like to welcome you all to Addir's second installment of the Distilled Wisdom series on connection. We hope this series helps you equip yourself and your community with practices for perseverance, resilience, and flourishing in these tumultuous times through a series of dynamic conversations between seasoned practitioners of the world's greatest religious, spiritual, and ethical traditions. Part of what has inspired Distilled Wisdom actually is a study by the Springtide Research Institute in March of this year, and it showed that 46% of the people who were surveyed, who were 18 to 25-year-olds, had begun a new spiritual practice in direct response to quarantine and other effects of COVID-19. So almost half of the group, were in active search for spiritual answers in this time of uncertainty and isolation. So when we saw this, we realized that as MIT's interfaith community, we had a unique opportunity to support people in their quest for practices that would sustain and empower them during the pandemic. So today we are honored to have two speakers talk to us on the topic of connection, Rabbi Michelle Fisher and Sadananda Dasa. I hope I did not butcher the names. But before we begin, we would like to ask you all to message on the chat where you are tuning in from. We're all probably in very scattered places, so it'd be exciting to see what time zone people are in, etc. So I'll give a minute for that. And as you do this, I would like to acknowledge the people who were on the land where MIT stands. So MIT acknowledges Indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the land and the enduring relationship that exists between them and their traditional territories. And so the land on which we sit in MIT is the traditional unceded territory of the Wampanoag Nation. So we acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced occupation on their territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous people connected to this land on which we gather from time immemorial. And if you would like to see the history of the land in which you are on, I found this really cool link. I hope it works, but you can check it out. So I've posted the link there. Very cool. We've got we've got New Jersey, where I'm from. Let's see, South Dakota. Very cool. Lots of cool places. Some Massachusetts that I recognize. Got Idaho. But yeah. Feel free to check it out, and I'm really excited for today and for all of you to be here to share in this wisdom with me. Back to Monto.
Thanks, Marwa. Yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us this evening for our second installment of this series. Tonight's topic is on connection. My name is Manato Jansen, and I am one of the MIT Addir interfaith interns for this year. So before we get started, just some general housekeeping and Zoom logistics things to inform you about for tonight. So all participants' audio will be muted until the Q&A session. And then when we get to the Q&A session, attendees will be manually unmuted if they're chosen to ask a question that they submit. And please feel free to keep your video camera on. We'd love for this to feel as close to, an in-person community gathering as we can, but also just a reminder to keep visual distractions or disruptions to a minimum during our session. And as for today's format, we're going to start off with hearing from our guest speakers, who will be in conversation with each other on today's topic. And then that will be followed by the Q&A session. And then finally, some breakout rooms for anyone who might be interested in continuing the discussion afterwards. So if there are any questions that happen to arise as you listen to our speakers tonight, be sure to write it out somewhere so that you can submit it later on in the session. But now I'd like to hand it over to two of our Addir Interfaith Fellows, Elena and Lindsay to introduce our speakers.
And actually, real quick, I'm going to grab the mic for a second. My name is Adam. I'm the Addir coordinator. Before we introduce our speakers, I just have to point out that we right now are in the presence of greatness because in our midst is the previous Addir coordinator and the founder of Addir, who got Addir started 14 years ago. So we just want to give a warm, loving shout out to Aura Gladstone. So if you guys in your little reactions thing have the claps, we want to give claps to Aura, who got this program started. And thanks to her hard work, it is still going today, and I think impacting the lives of many MIT students. So Aura, great to have you here.
All right, Elena and Lindsay, feel free to introduce our speakers for this evening.
I can go ahead. I have the honor of introducing Rabbi Michelle Fisher. So Rabbi Michelle Fisher is the executive director of MIT Hillel, the Jewish student organization at MIT. She is the first alumna rabbi from MIT and describes her return to MIT almost 12 years ago as the mothership calling her home. Rabbi Fisher earned her undergraduate degree in chemistry from Princeton University and her master's in chemistry from MIT. Ordained at the Jewish Theological Seminary, she has served as a congregational rabbi in Potomac, Maryland, and in Walnut Creek, California, and is a veteran of the U.S. Naval Chaplain Corps. Rabbi Fisher enjoys fantasy and science fiction, cycling, enology, and exploring the nexus of science and religion. We asked both of our speakers to share a memory from their time in college, and Rabbi Fisher shared that one of her more memorable exploits at Princeton was scaling the outside of the main administrative building, Nassau Hall, in an attempt to steal the clapper that rang the bell in the building's tower. The custom at the time was that a first-year student would remove the 40-pound metal striker from inside the bell, thus preventing the bell from ringing to announce the beginning of the semester's classes. Rabbi Fisher was the first and only female to get caught doing so, as a year later, Princeton removed the bell clapper to limit liability from such escapades.
And I'm introducing our second speaker, Sadananda Dasa. Sadananda Dasa is the Vaishnava Hindu Chaplain at MIT and also works as a life coach, mentor, and spiritual guide, and serves as the general manager of the India Heritage Foundation, Boston. After finishing his MBA and pursuing work with British Gas and Procter & Gamble, he was introduced to concepts of ancient Indian spirituality and philosophy, especially those expounded in modern English by Srila Prabhupada, the founder and spiritual master of ISKCON. He was also fascinated to learn the stunning rigor of intellectual debates and insightful discourses employed in these ancient Vedic systems. In 2011, he plunged into a serious pursuit of Indian spirituality and became a monk and missionary member of ISKCON Bangalore. Sadananda Dasa has been a committed student of the Gaudiya Vaishnava school of Hinduism, which was developed and popularized by a 15th century saint-philosopher Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. While he continues his pursuit of spiritual learning, Sadananda Dasa also keeps his interests in science alive, helping others to spiritually enrich their lives with wisdom, refined character, compassion, and happiness is my life's mission, says Sadananda. And Sadananda's college memory is the following. He says, during my freshman year at college, I fell down from the second floor of my college dorm. It was an accident and I had multiple fractures on my right leg, ankle, nose, etc. Interestingly, it happened on the first day of our semester examination. But serendipitously, that fulfilled my childhood dream of experiencing flying like Spider-Man, and I became instantly popular in the college.
Thank you both. Yeah, we're so glad to have you both with us tonight and for you to share with us your traditions and your experiences and various practices around practical ways that we can more fully embody and nurture our sense of connection in our current time. So as we move into our conversation portion, just a little thing about timing, just so that we can like keep track of the time as we go through this. Adam will just be ringing singing bowl as we approach the end of each section. So if you're curious what that is, that's what's happening. But yeah, we're gonna move to our first prompt. So the first question that we'd like for you to share with us is, could you share for us a brief introduction? We know it's a short time, but if you could share with us a brief introduction and overview of your tradition and how the concept of connection figures into that tradition. So Rabbi Fisher, if you'd like to start us off.
Thank you all. It is a big pleasure to be here tonight. I always love saying that when people ask me, like, what does Judaism say about? I usually respond with, well, do you want me to say it on one foot? Meaning there's a story in Jewish tradition that one of our rabbis was asked to teach all of Torah while standing on one foot. And the response that Rabbi Hillel gave, the rabbi for whom the Jewish organization on campus is named for, was love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary, go and learn. And I think that learning is going to be a theme, as you'll see, for many of my comments throughout the evening. But I want to begin just talking about Judaism. Judaism often gets lumped into chaplaincies and religious groups, but Judaism is not actually a religion. Judaism is much more a peoplehood, and it is a peoplehood. If you are practicing religion, Judaism is the religion you would be practicing. And if you believe in God, then the God of Judaism is the God that you would believe or believe in. I also, Judaism is often said to be a monotheistic religion. And then people come to me and say, but wait, there's atheist Jews that I know. And I say, yes, if I had to really describe Judaism, it is the religion that posits there is no more than one God, that the practice of being together and living in community, the being connected to other Jews around the world, to Jews of different societies, of different cultures, that have been at different, living in different places and in different countries. The peoplehood of practice of somewhat faith, of bloodline, of tied to a particular past and tying yourself to a particular future are all part of what Judaism is all about. And we feel that connection in many ways. One of the most obvious ones for anyone who opens a Jewish prayer book is that 99, if not 99.5 or 6% of the prayers that we recite are in the plural. Everything is we and us. There is very little solo language. There is very little language, me, I want. There are, in fact, a number of different prayers that can only be done if you have a community together. And a community for Judaism is defined as 10 individuals. So when 10 people come together I pray on my own, having, every morning, most afternoons, every evening. But there are certain prayers that I cannot say if I don't have 9 other adult Jews with me. And I can't there's a public reading of the Torah, of the 5 books of Moses, which is one of the main texts of, or the foundational texts of Judaism. that can't have a public reading with certain blessings before and after it unless 10 Jews, adult Jews are present. Many of our holidays began as pilgrimage festivals to the land of Israel, and particularly to Jerusalem and the former temple that was last knocked down in the year 70 of the Common Era. So it's been 2,000 years without the worship that we did in the temple. But a lot of our pilgrimage festivals throughout the year were communal festivals where everybody came together in order to give blessing and praise and celebrate the good harvests and the historical moments that happened to our people at those times of year. And so it really, there are multiple places where community comes together as one of the core values and concepts that we have. And I would also say that when it comes to our connection, not just with each other and human beings, but our connection to God, I mentioned, study and the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. We talk about the fact that when we pray, we talk to God. When we study our spiritual texts, our religious texts, our historical Jewish texts and rabbinic texts, that's when God talks to us. And we believe that that connection continues throughout the generations with the commentaries that our forefathers and foremothers, put into thinking about what we can understand of God's desire for us as interpreted over the years, 4,000 or 5,000 years of our tradition. And that's when we can continue to have a connection to God in hearing God's word. God hears our words whenever we pray, and we hear God's words when we examine the texts of our tradition. The other parts where connection comes in is also within the family. And I'm going to talk a lot in some of the follow-up questions about Shabbat, which is the Jewish holiday that occurs every week from Friday night to Saturday night, and is really both a family-based and friend-based time every week of coming together. And also then the 3 prayer services that we do, again, get done. And that's when the public reading of the 5 books of Moses of the Torah gets done, which makes once a week a focus on connections with family, connections with God, connections with community come to the forefront regularly, so you can't forget how important those are.
Thanks, Rabbi Fisher. Sadananda?
Thank you for this opportunity, and I just want to say by no means I'm an expert or I've become a virtuoso or something, and I can share some very distilled wisdom. But I for sure know that there are this wonderful treasure of knowledge available, and if we use them, we can be benefited. So my talk is not about what we do, it's more about how we do. I'm reminded of the famous poet T.S. Eliot, who says, where is the wisdom which is lost in knowledge? And where is the knowledge which is lost in information? We have a lot of information, especially in this modern age where technology is so advanced. Connecting with one person, we don't need. I mean, we have smartphones. Just pressing a few buttons, we can connect to anyone in the remotest part of the world. Yet people deep within feel very lonely. There is something which is bothering, which is not right. And a question may be asked as to why. What is the problem? Is there something that spirituality can offer? The answer is an emphatic yes. Actually, material things focus on changing the externals. how I can have something bigger, better, all this kind of things. But the spiritual things, it focuses on changing the internals. So my idea behind today's this conversation that we are having, if you can take something which you can implement in your life, which is practical, which is implementable, which makes sense, I feel then I would do something good. So the whole idea is spirituality can expand our perception. We have a perception about things, people, problems, connectivity in our own mind. But what spirituality does is it expands the perception of it. It widens the horizon. I'm reminded of Einstein, a very famous quote where he says, "Problems cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that created them." So just to let you know how spirituality can really help us, I want to give you one very important secret. And it is related to productivity. I'm sure everybody wants to know how he or she can become more productive. And if you look on Google or YouTube, you'll find dozens of people talking about what can give them productivity. You might be thinking that I might be sharing some productivity app like Todoist or something like that, that will make me more productive. But no, I'm just going to share a secret which is revealed in the ancient Vedic text and which is so powerful, which we don't see. So when sometimes, in our life, we are trying to do different activities, we are trying to fill our days with this activity, with that activities, we often don't notice that there are hidden time wasters. We just don't factor about them. And one of those hidden time wasters is our own thoughts. Time, important concept is time is not just taken by actions, but also by our own thoughts. Suppose we have a conflict with someone and the conflict may just, somebody just vented out some harsh words. And that 10 or 15 seconds of those exchange of those harsh words, it stays within our mind for long. And even if I'm spending 1 hour, the next 1 hour on an assignment, even if the 1 hour is spent, but I'm hardly any productive because my mind is occupied with that thought. It doesn't translate into productivity. So thoughts, especially these negative thoughts, they are about problems, and they seem to come with a very important characteristic about them is they seem to come with an inbuilt mental glue. What that means is if a problem surfaces in our mind, it just doesn't go. And it just stays there and stays there and stays glued, as if, I often say that, life determines our problems and we determine their size. So what that means is there are troubles, there are problems, there is stress which needs to be dealt. But then the more we dwell on that problem, the more the problem seems to be bigger and bigger, bigger. And in our mental world, and it becomes so big and we are so distracted. Sometimes we are more demoralized, and this way our thoughts take a huge amount of our time. So, I can go on giving some examples about negative thoughts, but I just want to drive this concept. Just one example I gave of harsh words. It could also be something like worrying or a stress. Now, worrying or stress is like a ceiling fan, which goes round and round and round and round. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? So, what it does is it puts our thoughts and actions out of sync. So we are doing one activity, but we are thinking of something else. We are engrossed in some other things. Remember one very important thing, that the present is all that we have. And the present is all that we will ever have. We will never have anything more than the present moment. And worry makes us absent in the present. Worry makes us absent in the present. It puts our thoughts elsewhere. So then there is certainly a problem that needs to be dealt with. But the important thing is, what it does is it saps our energy. It doesn't just make us unproductive. Sometimes it not just underproductive, but it makes us unproductive or even counterproductive, right? Because I'm doing something, but my mind is occupied with something else. And then all this, this worries and the stress, what is the solution? Very interestingly, two examples I want to give. The psychiatrists, the psychologists, they say the worry comes because of external uncertainty, right? So if there is a external uncertainty, then it can create some kind of worries. But deep, further research, it says it is not just external uncertainty, it is internal instability. And that is where my talk is focused around how we can anchor ourselves to something which is stable, which is unchangeable. Because in these changing times, when things are changing, when things are not in our control, it makes us more worried, more stressful. Spirituality gives a solution where we can anchor ourselves to something which is stable, serene, and permanent.
Thank you, Sadananda. And thank you both for sharing a little window, a little intro into your faith and tradition. So with the topic of tonight's session being connection, could you share with us a spiritual practice from your tradition that equips and sustains one's work around connection? And with those practices, how might they be adapted outside of your tradition? So perhaps for those who are searching for meaningful practices but don't belong to the same tradition. Sadananda, if you want to start us off.
Sure, why not? So basically, what I was trying to say is that, these thoughts which are there in our mind, which occupy a lot of time, can be broadly classified into four kinds of thoughts: positive thoughts, negative thoughts, essential thoughts, and there are waste thoughts. So, one of the trick in life is to keep small things small. Believe me, it's a very big thing. It's not easy to keep small things small. I'll give you just one example. Let's say, somebody wants to buy a jeans. And, if it is just a necessity that I want to, cover my bodily part, or just a dress that I'm buying, that's one thing. But if it is about, like it's a status symbol, or I want to communicate something to the society based on the brand that I'm wearing, then it becomes a big thing. So like that, there are small things in our life we need to learn, or we need to know how to keep them small. And believe me, it's not easy. One example which I found in the research, I can share the link right now. It's not readily available. It talks about a simple activity of buying tickets to a cinema, and it says that the people in America, they think twice. The thoughts generated in American brain is more than twice than an Indian brain. Just the simple fact of buying a ticket, cinema ticket, because they're thinking where I'm going to sit, who's going to be sitting next to me. If there are two of us, who's going to sit on the left, who's going to sit on the right, like that. So if our life is occupied with all these thoughts, then it becomes very difficult. What do we do with this? Interestingly, so as I was trying to tell in the beginning, the whole idea that I'm trying to share here is, if I can take control over this inner thoughts, if I can become more productive, if I can connect to that unchangeable core, then I'll be more happy, more stable, more serene, and in that way I can connect with other people very nicely. To connect with that Supreme Lord or that unchangeable core, there are three practices which Hindu philosophy talks about. One is yoga, the second one is meditation, and the third one is mantra. So yoga is something which probably all of us know about or have heard about, and it's very popular. People are practicing different kinds of yoga, but the real meaning of the word yoga is to connect, to connect with that unchangeable, to connect with that. This is not about some physical exercises or some postures. They are all just the peripheral or the superficial things. For example, let's say, I'm from India. So in India, there is this cricket, which is very popular. So there, the batsmen, they have different stands. Somebody keeps the bat touched to the ground. Somebody keeps it little above the ground. But the whole idea of doing all these things is to hit the ball. Similarly, all these bodily exercises, they are meant to give us some kind of stability, some kind of focus, some kind of relaxation, so that we can connect to that supreme. But if that doesn't happen, then the real, the meaning or the purpose of yoga is lost. There are different kinds of yogas, which the ancient yoga text mention about. I'll keep that a little later. The second one is meditation. After the yoga basically is meant for the external body. I mean, the exercises that we are doing, it keeps the body controlled. Then it comes to the mind. And meditation is not about meditating on something abstract. It is meditating on the Supreme Lord and our connection with Him, and how He is so supremely, He's our greatest well-wisher, and how by connecting with Him we can experience a joy which is transcendental, which is beyond, which cannot be described in material terms. That is the meditation part. I'll come to the mantra. Mantra may be, something which is new for you, yoga and meditation. Some of you have tried, some of you would have heard it. But the word mantra is coming from the scriptures. It's a Sanskrit word which has got two parts, man and tra. Man means mind, and tra means which can deliver or control the mind. See, usually when we are hearing through our ears. But that hearing is not enough, because it is not touching still our heart, or it has not touched the soul. So the sages, ancient sages, they had practiced this wonderful technique of controlling the mind by reciting this mantra. Now, it may appear like an ordinary sound vibration produced by the combination of some letters or words, but it is not true. Just to give you an example, let's say E is equal to mc square. We know it is a very powerful equation. But if some layman sees, he sees, okay, E is there, it's an alphabet, M and C is there, there are also two alphabets. Probably it is not making sense. I mean, they are just some combination or arrangement of few alphabets. But a person who knows that, it has so much of information packed, and if somebody knows really the utility of that, he can, it can make tremendous sense. Similarly, these mantras are very powerful, subtle sound vibrations. So when we chant this mantra, this Vedic sound, it has a tremendous impact and effect on our body, mind, and soul. So when we chant, it makes this dirty thoughts flush from our system. These dirty thoughts, which needs to be processed, are like viruses inside us. And like, if there is some germs or viruses outside, we can use different cleansing agent to clean it. Maybe we can use a vacuum cleaner to clean something which is dirty. What do we do to cleanse our dirty thoughts? One of the very powerful and efficient method is this chanting of mantra. And that helps us connect with the Supreme Lord. And once that connection is established, it is easier to connect with the outer world. So the point which I'm trying to drive here is, we have a vertical relationship with the Lord, and we have horizontal relationship with our friends, relatives, and others. Now, this horizontal relationship may not work always, even though we want somebody to behave in a particular way. We have some expectation, and we have some commitment in a relationship, but it may not, go as per what I have expected it to go in that way. But the vertical relationship, once we have developed that vertical relationship, the Lord is extremely loving, very benevolent, and He is waiting for us to turn towards Him. And when we establish that relationship, then it is very easy to connect with the other people. And as I said, it is very important, not the what, but the how. Having genuine compassion, not just superficially talking to someone and not meaning really what we want. That kind of thing will not help. The ancient yoga text which I am referring to is called Bhagavad Gita. There it is mentioned, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gabhihastini Sunichena Sopakecha Pandita Samadarshina. It's a Sanskrit verse. I'm not an expert in Sanskrit, but I have learned this. I have, after years of studying and understanding, one of the very powerful things this verse talks about. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. The real wisdom doesn't make us very proud. Oh, I have achieved this, I have done this, I have got so much of this thing. It makes one humble. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Vinaya is humble, humility. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini. It is talking about 4 completely unrelated, different living entities. Brahmana, a person who's priest, who's in the who gives guidance to the society. Brahmana, Gavi Hastini, a pregnant elephant. Vidya Vinay Sampana, Brahmana, Gavi Hastini, Suni Chena, Sopakecha, a dog eater and a dog. All of them at equal level, because he's seeing the soul, which is unchangeable, which is there within the body, which makes a person grow. Like when we were born, or when we were there in the womb of our mother, we had one cell. From that one cell, we have grown so much. The reason being, there is a spirit soul inside. If a baby is born dead, it doesn't grow. The presence of the spirit soul makes us grow. But along with the growth of, so that spirit soul is present not just in a human being, it is also present in a gigantic body like that of an elephant, in a small, tiny ant, or it is present even in a dog eater or whatever it is. And a person who has developed this vision, spiritual vision, he is able to see all of them with equal vision. That is how he is able to connect. There is no question of hatred. There is no question of contempt. There is no question of superiority. He's seeing with equal vision. So I'll stop here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us and telling us more about practices that I'm sure like many of us have heard, the words, but we might not know too much other than that. So yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, Rabbi Fisher, if you could share with us some practices as well and how they might be adapted outside of your tradition.
Sure, happy to. Sadananda talked a lot about the internal. I'm going to be talking about 2 mostly external practices. One is the practice of chavruta. Chavruta comes from the Hebrew and actually the Aramaic word and root chaver, which means friend. And it is the traditional way that Jewish text is studied. And Judaism says you can't learn a text by yourself. You're always supposed to be in a pair with a friend who is going to be learning with you and will take your argument and push back so that you can hone it better to better understand not just what the text is saying, but how your understanding and your life experience goes to that text. 2,000 years ago, in the 2nd century of the Common Era, there were a lot of famous rabbis who were in Chavruta together. One of the most famous pairs was Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. And they were arguing, there's many different discussions that the Talmud, that the rabbinic literature relates about their conversations. And one thing that I should say about what Chavruta is based in and teaches is disagreement based on mutual respect. And it's, I can fully 100% disagree with your view and your reading of something and sit at the same table to discuss that with you and help you even to make your argument stronger for you. And Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, according to the Talmud, were arguing one day over a particular really small piece of Jewish law and about purity and impurity with respect to actually, of all things, making tools that out of iron. And Reish Lakish, gave one answer. Rabbi Yochanan gave another answer. It actually is a complicated story because Rabbi Yochanan insulted Reish Lakish, and that led to problems. And in the end, Reish Lakish dies. And Rabbi Yochanan is beside himself. And all of the other students try to find the best student in class to go and be Rabbi Yochanan's new chavruta, because they knew that they couldn't leave him without a study partner. And the best student they got there, would sit there, and for every argument that Rabbi Yochanan made, he would give 100 reasons why Rabbi Yochanan was right. And Rabbi Yochanan finally threw up his hands and he's like, I need Reish Lakish back, because every time that I gave an argument, he gave 100 reasons why I was wrong. And he died of a broken heart for not having someone to struggle with. and to have as that partner and that conversationalist and that person who would make him better by pushing against him and helping him see from other angles. And there's even a saying someplace else in the Talmud, O chavruta o matuta. Give me either a thoughtful partnership or don't let me be. And this whole concept that it's not good, even as, it's a different context it's taken from in the book of Genesis, but it's not good for a human being to be alone. And that comes in the way you approach text and study and are in the world, looking at the world as well. So that would be, I would say, it's a spiritual practice that I think all of us can do, because we're all, taking classes. We're all studying, different parts of, be it chemistry or engineering, or maybe one of the humanities classes that you're taking for one of your HAS requirements. And to have someone else, whether it's working on those piece sets together, which I've heard from many students how difficult that sometimes can be in the Zoom world, that it's sometimes easier just to work on it on your own and then come together and check answers. But really to be able to have someone else who is pushing you to excel is a great practice for school. And I would say in this divided country here in the United States that we have right now, to find someone that does not share your views, and that in fact you might find their views really difficult to listen to still sit at that table and say, I'm going to listen and I'm going to ask the probing questions from a place of respect and not a place of disdain, to help you understand, and even more so help the other person understand themselves better, to be able to explain their views and understand their own views as well. So that's one practice I want to give. The other practice is what I discussed, I started to discuss in the first section, is about Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath, which starts, a Jewish day begins at nightfall. In the book of Genesis, after the first day, it says there was evening and there was morning, day one day. And so from that, we get the Jewish days start at nightfall. So Shabbat starts on Friday night, 18 minutes before sunset, and goes until 3 stars can be seen in the sky on Saturday night. During that time period of those about 25 hours, an observant Jew is literally unplugging from the world. From Friday night to Saturday night, I don't write, I don't use a computer, I don't use a telephone, I don't cook, I don't light a fire. I'm trying to think of other things. I don't use electricity unless it's already been put on a timer. I don't get in a car or on an airplane and travel beyond, the area that I can walk near my home. And those are all the things I don't do. And the things that I therefore have the time that I have now created and opened up to do is to have a Friday night meal with my friends, to read a book, to take a nap. I love it. It's one of the things to me is the most holy thing possible, is taking a nap on Saturday afternoon. In terms of taking on part of a tradition, I was, as the intro said, I was a naval chaplain candidate. And one of the Southern Baptists in my unit when we were in chaplain school so loved the concept of the Shabbat nap that he took it on as a Sunday afternoon practice. And he had his Sunday nap that he took, and his wife and his kids knew that he had an hour on Sunday afternoon. They weren't to bother him. It's also a time to sing, actually. One of the things that is a beautiful tradition around the Shabbat table on Friday night or on Saturday is to sing. I have a horrible voice. I actually have a congregant when I was hired as a congregational rabbi in California, who the head of the search committee had perfect pitch. And I was leading services one morning, some point months into my hire. And he came up to me after services and he said, Rabbi Fisher, that was completely impressive. And I said, what did I do? He said, well, when you sang Psalm 150, it only has 6 verses. You had 8 keys. I'm willing to make fun of myself that way. And I'll sing on Friday night with my friends. And there's something that opens up when people are singing together and you don't have a cell phone on the table and you don't have the TV on and you're focused on each other, that brings people together. Actually, that's so funny. That just reminded me of a song that we sang in elementary school. Music brings people together. I had not thought about that, for decades now. And it's also a time then to really sit down and share what your week is like and to talk with your friends and talk with your family. And actually, one of my mentors said that part of her Shabbat practice, she only uses the telephone to call her parents on Shabbat because she doesn't live in the same city as them. And she considers that part of her Shabbat practice is to reach out and make sure that she, checks with her parents once a week. So for me, Shabbat is this break from work, a break from showing my and humanity's power over nature. And that's what we're taking a break from, is anything that shows that we have the power to change and create, our environments. And like the first and second chapter of Genesis talk about, that God took a break from all of the creation and manipulation of the earth on the seventh day. We work at Imitatio Dei, and we also take that break to make the space then for the meditation, for the prayer, for the reading, for the singing, for our friends, for that walk in the park. And for me, that's something that just reminder that we can't work 24/7, and having that time off allows us to renew. And it's a gift that I get every single week that I think is, something that some form of that is something everyone could, take on as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rabbi Fisher. I like what you shared about taking a scriptural argument and like being encouraged to push back, and that being like a communal pursuit of growth and strengthening our arguments. And that comes thanks to connectedness and community. So, and also the beauty of Shabbat, of disconnecting to, in a sense, reconnect. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you both. We're going to move to our third and final prompt. Rabbi Fisher, if you could start us off again. Could you share with us a story or a moment from your life of how your practices have impacted you personally and your engagement with building and nurturing connection?
Sure, with pleasure. I'm going to go back and continue a little bit more about Shabbat. One of the practices that is common among many Jewish families, and I grew up with, is parents blessing their children on Friday night. And literally my dad would put his hands on my head and on my brother's head, though at some point in our teenage years, it was don't touch my hair. And he gives a blessing to us. Judaism is very much a liturgical religion. We have set liturgy for all of the different things that we do. And so the blessing that he says every Friday night, and this point on Friday afternoon, I'm on the phone often to get my blessing. When in non-COVID times, my father and mother would be at my Shabbat table, or at a holiday meal, we'd be all together. Dad still blesses me, even if I have congregants or students or whomever at the table. Dad still gets up and blesses me. And the blessing is, for a girl, may God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, the four matriarchs from the book of Genesis. And then using the words of the priestly blessing from the book of Numbers in the Bible. May God bless you and keep you. May God cause his countenance to shine upon you. May God turn his face to you and grant you the blessing of peace. And there's something really special to that is a connection that comes because we're all together, and because it's that, both a connection to my parents, and in places, when I've been on campus for family weekend, I've encouraged, parents to also bless their college kids. And I think that there's, that moment of taking a step aside on Shabbat and remember, even in the weeks that I was angry with my folks for whatever, there wasn't getting away from that blessing. And it was just this showing of love that I, know to this day, is a part of things. And I would also say that Chavruta for me has become a great practice. I still have study partners that I've learned with at different times in my life. In fact, right now I am in a practice of doing what's called Daf Yomi. I am studying one folio page, meaning front and back page of Talmud every day until I finish the entire Talmud. It started, this cycle of learning this way started in January. It'll go for 7.5 years. My study partner who helped me prepare, a friend of mine from college who helped me prepare the 10 pages I needed for my entrance exam to rabbinical school, she was the one that inspired me back in January when she came to Israel. I was there on vacation, and she came just to do a huge celebration of actually women who had finished the 7.5 year cycle. And I looked at this and was like, wow, wait, Shira's actually someone I know and like I've learned with. Maybe this is something I can do too. And we've taken up Chavruta, together. We're not studying every page because it's really tough to find the timing to make that work. But every 2 to 3 weeks, we're checking in, and I've been keeping a Google Doc of some of my insights and thoughts, and we've been pushing each other to think more deeply on different ideas, especially when you're going that fast through a whole vast range of material, to have someone who can, pause with and say, this I found interesting, and this I found interesting, and can I push you on that? Why was that, something that was noteworthy to you? That it's made a connection that way that has been then over, years as well. That someone who I've spent so much time learning about and may have been separated from for years, where, she's in Minneapolis now and she has, a number of kids, and, we've each had our own jobs and been doing things to, remake that time again, to reconnect. And sometimes I will say Chavruta time is an excuse because you're supposed to be studying, but a lot of times what you're studying is each other's lives. And that to me is one of the things that I've learned over time as well, is Chavruta is as much about that friend and that friendship as it is about the text that is between you, that you're trying to learn as well. And so, yeah, so that's definitely impacted me in a real way, because it's great friends that I've kept for life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Sadananda, if you could share with us a story from your life, how it's impacted you personally.
Sure. I would like to narrate a real life incident. This happened when I was working in Mumbai in India. I was working for British Gas, and as part of my job responsibility, I was traveling to a nearby city called Pune. And there is a 6-lane highway, which is not very usual. I mean, you don't see that in India so often, but Mumbai and Pune are very well connected. And I travel almost, as I said, every week, twice or thrice. So, and these are all one ways. I was zooming and I was going. And in between Mumbai and Pune, there are many tunnels which come. And one of the days, I was very drowsy and because of workload, and I was traveling in the afternoon. So I dozed off and I had an accident. I banged the tunnel. There was no car, nothing. I banged. And the car was completely smashed. Yeah, fully gone. And then I was injured. I had, those glass pieces in different parts of my chest, and I'd sprained, and but I was conscious, even though, it was a very dangerous accident. I was safe. Police came, the ambulance came, and everything happened. I was admitted in the hospital. My parents were not there with me. So then I thought I was in the hospital maybe for about a month or so. I was not feeling good about myself, that I had met with an accident. I'm not able to go to my work, and all these things were going on. But then I thought, suddenly there was this thought which occurred to me, that even though externally this thing has happened to me, I still have a choice as to how I should respond to the situation. This thought made me so empowered that I don't need to react to a situation in the same manner as probably anybody could. And I have a choice. And there is a way I can exercise my choice to respond to it positively. And what helped me to respond better during those days was this chanting of this mantra that I was referring in the beginning. And so you see, between any stimuli and a reaction that we have, there is always a gap. And a human being who has learned to develop, to control his thoughts, responds to a situation instead of reacting. And it is an art to develop that skill, to be able to respond and not just react. Because, oftentimes in life, we don't have control over the external things, how it is going to unfold. And most of the times, these are unfavorable. We are put into some kind of a pressure cooker situation where we have to deal with simultaneously multiple important things. One thing goes wrong, there is consequences. It's very important to know and learn to have control over your own thoughts and desires. The ancient yoga text that I'm referring to not only gave me spiritual strength from within, but it also, made me respond to that situation in a very matured way, which I myself was shocked. But that one incident made me realize that I should take up spirituality more seriously. And that's why that's how one thing led to another, and then I became a monk. Why waste time in doing something else when this knowledge and this practices can be shared with others and people can get benefited from this? That was one of the motivations for me. The other thing that I wanted to share is, let's say, some of the things like which Rabbi Michelle Fisher was mentioning, Sabbath, which happens in the weekends, right? Friday and Saturday, and you switch off your material things and have dinner together and share some good vibes and thoughts. But then again, after that, you have to go back to that unpleasant real world where you have to face and deal with those situations. They don't go away just because you have rejuvenated yourself or you have energized. Maybe you are better equipped now to face. Again, you need to recharge yourself in those two days, and then again go back to the real world. Is there anything that we can do always, and not just wait for that one thing to happen? Is there something that we can practice? We can continue to do that despite our busy schedules, despite our work, despite our priorities, despite our commitments and engagements. Still we can remain very connected. There is one practice which I want to share, and it's a very important, the understanding of that practice has a very significant relevance to all of us in our life. There is a place in India called Vrindavan, and there is a hill there called Govardhan Hill. It's very auspicious, and people circumambulate that hill. They just don't go on walk. I mean, walking is considered to be one of the preferred methods, but they also, they fall flat, and then again they'll rise, and then again they'll fall flat, and like that they will continue the complete circumambulation, which takes months, but they do it because they think it is going to give them a lot of spiritual credit and all those kind of things. It may look some kind of a mindless ritual to some people, what they're doing, why there is a hell, and why somebody has to go around that. But there is a very spiritual, there is a deep inherent spiritual message within that. You see, irrespective of the path that one is taking to circumambulate that, the distance of that person from the hell always remains same. And when he's doing, of course, and after he does, he gets a spiritual accomplishment and joy and satisfaction and goes back. But that fact that, if we can keep God always in the center of all our activities, then even though we are engaged in different activities, different places, we're doing different things, we will still be connected and we will still be spiritually very strong. Did I hear the bell? Was the bell there, Adam?
Yes, you did hear it.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you for the rich stories and for your lessons and yeah, for these practices that I'm sure are encouraging to us as we ponder how to strengthen our experiences of connection, especially in these times. Yeah, thank you both. We're now going to transition to our Q&A session. We're going to give, but before we transition to the audience Q&A, we're going to give each of our speakers the opportunity to ask one question that they might have for each other. And then we'll open the floor for questions from our attendees. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask our speakers, please type it in the chat box, and we ask that you send it as a private direct message to Adam Reynolds. He's gonna sift through it. So yeah, and then if your question is selected, then we'll call your name and then we'll unmute you, and then you can expand further on your question. So yeah, if you could send those questions to Adam Reynolds, feel free to start sending those his way. But yeah, for the time being, Rabbi Fisher and Sadananda will first open the space for questions from the two of you.
I guess I'm unmuted, so does that mean I have to go first? Thank you, Sadananda. I mean, it's always a pleasure to be able to have these sorts of conversations with each other. As Thea, who is the chaplain to the Institute and is in someplace in one of these squares, she said she gets to be here now. The three of us went to a high school and talked about religion. And now we actually get to hear each other's answers, which we never got to do when we were in the various breakout rooms that morning. So my question, Sadananda, was you talked a lot about the internal and, you know, talked to us about it. I think you said it twice. It's not what you do, but how you do it. And I heard a lot about internal and internal choice. And my question is, how does that translate to external responsibility? Is there a concept in Hinduism that also talks about then what the external looks like in our responsibility for others, the world, the circles beyond us?
Sure. Great question. You see, you know, the sages, they used to go to some secluded place to meditate, right? Because it helps, it's conducive to practice such kind of meditation. But if somebody asks you to go to such place now, at this present days, maybe to find something, a secluded place where you can meditate is not easy, right? Or a place where, you know, you're less disturbed is difficult to find. So I may wish that, you know, the external surrounding is to my liking. However, to get something like that is not easy. But on the other hand, you see, when you are trying to squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. When you are trying to squeeze a lemon, what you are getting is a lemon juice. You know, it may sound stupid. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is what is there within us that comes out in a situation where, you know, it is provoking, or where we are put into some kind of a reversal. we can't hide our emotions. We can't hide our inner things. It comes out. What you are will come out. So if you spend time on developing in your inner self, which doesn't, by the way, doesn't require only the external things. You can, it is like, it is not how much of what you have read or how much of what you have heard. It is how much of what you have read you have internalized or you have put into practice. How much of what you have heard or read, how much of that you have put into practice. Even if I do a little bit of that and make myself a better self from within, then even though the external situations are turbulent or I don't have control, I'm better equipped, I'm better prepared to deal with it. I can give a simple example, like a boat which is there on an ocean, and it is very turbulent, very violent, and there are lots of waves. So it is shaking constantly. It's like those disturbing thoughts, those thoughts which keep coming, and what do you do? But if that boat is anchored to something which is very strong and steady, then even though there are waves, even though it is shaking, it is still stable. So connecting to the unchanging core within gives us the stability to deal with the external situations and surroundings in a better way. That's the thing.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Michelle, and I actually love the Sabbath dinner. I've seen so many students, they come line up there. It's such a joy to see all of them. But my question, which I was trying to probably say when I was answering one of the things beforehand, how do you practice that same congeniality or that feeling of togetherness and the good vibes that you generate on those 2 days the rest of the week? How do you do that on a continuous basis?
I think it's part of that sense of renewal. I'm going to partially start answering your question with a story. My brother became completely Shabbat observant in high school. And then when he got to college, he stopped. And I did the opposite. I chose that when I went to college, I wanted to find a community where there would be a complete Shabbat observant community that I could be a part of. And I started keeping Shabbat in a full way once I got to college. And my brother was like, how did you do that? Like, I have so much work to do. If I didn't do my schoolwork on Saturday afternoon, I wouldn't get it done. And I looked at him and was like, I don't know how you do it that way. If I didn't take one day off, I don't know how I'd manage to be able to go through the rest of my week. And I think that it's that taking that break and reminding myself that I do have the power to stop, and I do have the power to say no, and I do have the ability to make my own time, even when it seems the externals, are piled up against me, is a reminder for those other 6 days. We actually say a blessing at the end of the Sabbath, the end of Shabbat on Saturday night, where we thank God for staying between the holy and the mundane, because the holy is only recognizable if you also have the mundane, and that there's something holy or special, let's say something special about the mundane times as well, because they allow you then to appreciate the holy. And so that there's what I bring from Shabbat into the rest of the week. And actually we use as part of that Havdalah, that separation ceremony on Saturday night, we use spices, because there's a understanding that you get this extra soul that is with you through the 25 hours of Shabbat. And by smelling those spices, it keeps that soul there a little bit longer. And that holiness, how do you keep that, with you through the week, and that sense of rest and that sense of, completeness. And I think it's, that taking that day off, there's a reminder at different times during the week, like, oh, I did it then. If I need a break now, it is okay to take that break now. And if I'm feeling like I'm not going to make it, there's always Shabbos. And there's always, the Sabbath to look forward to. And I know that I will be, having that time to rejuvenate and be back together again. So I think that they play off of each other, back and forth. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I ask a follow-up question with that?
Of course.
The follow-up is, you said that the mundane times is required to experience or to perceive the Holy Spirit, right? So does it mean in your tradition, if someone has not gone through some difficulties or reversals in life, will it be difficult for him to perceive or experience the holy, or how is it?
To perceive the holy, maybe not. But my guess is that people who have had hardship probably learn appreciation. I'm not going to say you need that hardship in order to be a better person, but my guess is that someone who has experienced a hardship has a much greater appreciation for the good times. I had a car accident a number of years ago, and I, thank God, only broke a couple ribs and needed some stitches. But I know that at least for the next few days afterwards, the whole world looked different to me. It looked brighter, it looked happier. I didn't need that car accident to go and make the world a brighter place, but I know that I appreciated more what that was. And I think that those that that's also like, I can appreciate the mundane so much more because I came down from the high of Shabbat. And I can appreciate Shabbat even more on those weeks when I just can't believe this week is ever going to end. And I have too much to do. And the best thing for me about being, by believing that I am commanded to do Shabbat means I'm stopping at candle lighting 18 minutes before, sunset on Friday. And yeah, all that stuff's going to be there Saturday night, but for 25 hours, it doesn't exist. There's no inbox, there's no nothing. And I can just put it aside and all those problems will come back again. I know that, but it's this cutout time that has been created for me that allows me to refresh.
Yeah, thank you both. We have our first question in. This question comes from Alex Baskin.
Am I supposed to voice it? Is it like that?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Monato. And thanks to both of our speakers and to all the amazing organizers and for everyone here. My question, Rabbi Fisher, is the beautiful portrait you painted of Shabbat sounded like something from the before times, like the before pandemic times. I'm wondering, like, what does it look? Yeah, how have you adapted? What does it look like, especially if you don't use electricity on Shabbat? How do you get together with others, or what's it looking like for you?
Great question. Thanks, Alex. So from day one in March, when we realized that pods were important and we weren't going to be, hanging out with everybody, my downstairs neighbors and I and another single friend of mine who's blocks away immediately declared ourselves a pod. And so every Friday night, we're down there together for dinner. I'm actually particularly lucky because Dave is an unbelievable cook, and he worked at America's Test Kitchen for 3 years. So I get great food every Friday night, and my responsibility is to bring the wine downstairs. And so the four of them, and then my friend Rebecca and I are all together, and that's our family. I still am not using electricity on Shabbat. To me, even like just turning on the Zoom, there are ways. In fact, the conservative movement, I'm a conservative rabbi, it's one of the streams of Judaism, has put together guidelines for how to use Zoom for services. And if you put something into place before Shabbat starts, it can continue. So like I have timers on lights and things. I'm not sitting in the dark, all of Shabbat. And there have been, my cousin's daughter became a bat mitzvah a few weeks ago, and I had another bar mitzvah last weekend. And for those two special events, I made sure my computer didn't turn off and go to sleep. And I got logged into the Zoom ahead of time, and they had it set up so that the Zoom was there. and so I was able to watch that, and I put it in a different room so it wasn't, in my sight for the rest of the day. But I know a lot of people during this time of COVID, use the Zoom because that's the way people are doing services. It's created a lot of creative solutions to create that part of community. And if I didn't have my pod together, it might be something that I would do. For the high holidays, for Shana and Yom Kippur, I made sure I knew that one of the things that my soul needed was to be in person for the services for those high holy days. And there were various minyanim in people's backyards that were socially distanced, no more than 15 people. No, children were allowed. So they had multiple services, one right after the other, and they abridged the services so that they could have one parent at, the 9 a.m. service and the other parent at the 11 a.m. service. But I knew that I needed that in-person part for those holidays. And so far the community's been making it. As we're in Boston and we probably are gonna get a little colder and are starting to get colder, those are harder to do. And like I said, if I didn't have my pod, it would be really tough and I might make other choices. I have a lot of friends who are making the choices of Zoom services, just using the computer for Zoom and making sure that their email is turned off and that their Google, is shut down, and finding creative ways to set things up in different ways to still make those connections happen. Great question. And an important one. Oh, and I was going to say, and I will say Passover also is one of those times that I don't use electricity, except this year for the family holiday, we had a computer that was set up with the Zoom, and there were people at my table who will use the, computer more. My downstairs neighbors use the computer more than I do. And my parents were able to join in, and my brother and his partner were able to join in. And that was just not quite the same as having everyone sitting around the table with 20 of us, but it did mean we were able to celebrate that holiday together. Less wine spills and less to clean up.
Thanks. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? We'd love to hear from you if you have any other questions for our speakers tonight. Feel free to send them in the private chat to Adam if you have any questions. As we wait for any more questions to come in, we're going to post a short evaluation form for all of you to fill out. It would be great it would be really helpful for us if you could fill this out for us as we continue the series throughout the academic year. We're going to keep this going throughout the spring semester as well. For right now, just maybe check and make sure that the link is accessible. We'll give you a minute or so after the Q&A session for you to fill it out. And the raffle entry is part of that short eval. So definitely do that. But yeah, are there any other questions that we have for our speakers tonight? All right, if you are still working on the survey, feel free to finish that up right now. We'd just like to wrap up maybe with some short closing statements from each of our speakers. If you have any last comments or reflections or thoughts, that'd be great.
I jotted down something after, I finished. It's always like you speak and then I could have said that too. So one of the things that I just wanted to point out about Chavruta's study that allows for that disagreement from a place of mutual respect is a sense of humility, of understanding that in any discussion, you only have your own experience to bring to the table. And your experience includes the things you've read, you've heard, whatever else, but you're only one person and you can't see every single view of everything that is out there. And there's a saying in Hebrew, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chaim, that these and these are the words of the living God. And my life experience is going to give me one view of, say, the crystal that's in the middle of the, room, and, Adam or Sadananda or Alex looking at it from another point is going to see a different part of, that crystal or that elephant, is the, I've heard it say. And so to understand that you can't know everything is why two Chavruta partners come to the table, because it could be that one's looking at it from a social point of view, and one's looking at it from an economic point of view, and one's looking at it from a cultural point of view, from having grown up in one part of the world and, someone from another, and that you don't have the capital T truth, and that humility is what allows you to push and be pushed by the other person.
Well, I would say this life is a wonderful opportunity to develop the relationship with the Lord, which each one of us can do. Relationship, which is love. And that's actually, it is, if if somebody wants to keep it very simple, no complications, then if we just can do this one thing, because of because we are godless, because we don't have God in our heart, we are suffering so much. And just developing this loving relationship with the Lord, if little by little we can do in life, I think that's a great achievement. And to do that, we need to follow certain principles. It doesn't happen without doing anything. And those principles, when we follow, that we develop some character. And when we develop character, if we don't have character, we can't even respect ourselves. Forget about others respecting us. So to become respectable, even in our own eyes, we have to have principles. Principles are inalienable, like how I'm going to lead my life. There are many such principles which the yoga text, they talk about. One I was talking about, samadarshana, seeing with equal vision, ahimsa, non-violence. It is so it's a choice I'm making. It's a principle I'm adhering to. I'm not going to harm people or live a life that causes the least harm. And Gita says that a truly thoughtful man will lead a life of non-cruelty and non-violence. So such a dedicated person develops the virtue of compassion and tolerance. So these principles, they lead to virtues in life. So if each one of us in our respective lives, in our respective personal spiritual growth and journey, can lead a life of principles, we can be better human beings, and the world will be a better world.
But that brings us to the end of our main portion of the event as a large group. So for those who want to stay online with us to engage further in conversation, feel free to stick around on the Zoom. We'll be putting you into breakout rooms. And as mentioned, our Distilled Wisdom series will continue in the spring, starting in February. We'll have some guest speakers from different traditions. A few of these speakers that we have lined up for next semester include Greg Epstein, who is Harvard and MIT's Humanist Chaplain. And then we also will have the Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi, who is President and CEO of the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values at MIT. So definitely join us for those. But again, yeah, we'd like to thank both Rabbi Fisher and Sadananda Dasa for bringing to this space your experiences and wisdom around practical ways to nurture and embody connection in these times that we find ourselves in. So I know for me personally, it's been a very enriching hour. I'm sure that all of us will be leaving this space with something to consider and incorporate in our lives or ponder further. So thank you again to both. And thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you all for coming tonight. Again, feel free to stick around for further discussion, but thank you all, and Have a good evening.